Hey, Iona fans, did you know that Iona brought in a highly successful basketball coach from FDU? I'm not talking about that guy Tobin. You know all about him already. I'm talking about Ang Szumilo coming from a great four-year run for the Knights that concluded with back-to-back NEC regular season titles and WNIT trips. And now, like Tobin, here she is in New Rochelle to keep the winning going and defend Iona's crown. Coach, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. Really appreciate you taking the time.
So when you got to FDU, the program was struggling. It was coming off an 8-win season when you got there. Obviously, you were able to turn things around there and build something special. If you could spend a couple of minutes and tell us about your approach to building that program back up to the tune of a 24-win season last year.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a process, right? Like anytime you take a team over, a program over, it's definitely a process. For me, that was, what is it, 4 years ago in 2019. That was my first time being a head coach. So we kind of taking over a new program. We're all kind of going over, through this together. I think the one thing that I want to definitely acknowledge is that I was very lucky when I got there, that the team, the returning players that I had, they were just great group of young women. They wanted to, start winning. They bought in. I mean, that first year really, it wasn't easy. We started 0-7. But in those 7 games, we probably had about 4 games that we should have won. Like we were up 5 with 50 seconds to go. All of a sudden, we just managed to find ways to lose. But I knew we were close. And it was just a matter of just changing something. So I was very lucky that the team that I took over, when some additions that we've made through the recruiting process, that spring, they bought in. And we just worked extremely hard. And then, as the time went on, we had a lot of young players. So year 2, that was the COVID year, the true COVID year. We made another step forward. I think we only ended up playing 24 games, but we had 16 wins. And then by year 3 and 4, we had a lot of seniors and upperclassmen who but at that point, it just made it a little bit, it was like a train that just kept on going, right? Because, in year 3 and 4, that's when kind of your culture is established, your standards, and you have the help of the players, right? Like I felt like last year, we had a player-led team, and your best teams usually are the ones that, you have player-led teams. So got to the point that sometimes during practice, like I didn't even have to say anything. And our leaders would just stop practice. Like, no, this is not good enough. We're running for this. Or, if they were supposed to shoot foul shots because we lost a certain drill that, had a goal, they weren't satisfied with how they lost that drill. It's like, no, we're not even shooting foul shots for it to get out of running. We're just going to run. So they did it on themselves, which as a coach, you just kind of, when you feel like you get to that place, you're like, okay, things are well, because like you don't have to be the bad guy anymore. They had higher expectations of themselves, and they recognized when they needed to be better.
So how long would you say it takes to build the culture that you want? I mean, it was a 4-year run there, but at one point, did you feel like, okay, this is the program I wanted?
I think year 3, I think in year 3, when you have players in your program for about 3 years, and then now they become the leaders, and we're not just talking about basketball, putting the ball in a basket. We're talking about just everything that you teach within your program, your culture. So I would say year 3.
Okay. So now you come to a situation where there are a good number of players back from last year's team, and Billy Chambers had her own culture. Success came and went over the years with her for sure, but she definitely had her culture, her way. How do you then transition it to your way? if there's a way of saying that nicely.
You know what? It's a process, right? It's always a process, right? Anytime you come to a new place, it's going to be a process. It's going to take some time. But I gotta tell you, Billy had amazing players on our team. So the returning players that we have, they're great people. They're great students. They excel in the classroom. High character players, high character people. So again, I'm in a situation where I don't have to worry about, cleaning up certain things that we're not about as a coaching staff, or we don't want in our culture, because I think Billy did a great job and, in that department, which makes it easier, right? When you take over a program. So, like I said, it's and I tell our team all the time, because right now when you take over, it's almost like now I have to reteach everything, right?
Yep.
Because you're not in year 2, year 3, where you have a lot of returning players. You have to reteach everything when it comes to your defensive concepts, offensive concepts, standards, right? How you want to run your program off the court too, and different things. And it's a lot. But every coach goes through it when they take over a program. I mean, it's just that comes, that becomes part of of the job. So I tell our team all the time, we're teaching it that way. It doesn't mean that it's the only way that works, because clearly it won last year. You guys, had a tremendous season, and MAC champions, and going to NCAA tournament. There's just different ways to win. So if we're teaching you how to defend certain things this way, or offensively certain concepts, and they're different than what you have been taught last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or wherever you come from, different college, different, high school program, AAU programs, it doesn't mean that our way is the only way that works. It just, that's the way that I know that has worked for me, for us, right? So it's just a lot of conversations, right? A lot of conversations. Right now we're at the stage where, we're introducing a lot of concepts, or have been introducing, through the summer now. But it's going well. They're buying in. They have the growth mindset. They want to do well. They want to get it all, right now. But as a coach, you just kind of understand, like, it's going to take some time.
Mm. So I talked about having a few players back from last year's team, and I've definitely have a couple of returnees that saw extensive minutes. Let's see, you have Judith Gomez, 5'9", junior guard. She played 28 minutes a game, 35% from three, averaged about 6 points a game. Natalia, I'm going to butcher her last name, Athkemzuri, 5'8", grad student guard, 19 minutes a game, 38% from three, 6.5 points a game. How important is it to have two important players from last year's Iona's team, regular rotation players that had that run through the great stretch run in February that Billy had put together, and then of course winning the MAC tournament as well and getting to the NCAAs? How important is it to have the two players that experienced that right back on the roster?
No, I mean, it definitely helps a great deal. Those two, Judith and Nat, along with the other returning players, like, they've experienced what it's like to win. They've experienced, we actually talked about this, and I asked the returning players, one of our team meetings, like, why do you guys think you guys had such a successful season? Like, it can't just all be because you had great players. Like, I've been around, I've seen enough where, I've seen enough of talented teams that had a lot of talent on their team, but they could never do what they did last year because there was no team chemistry. There was, there's just a lot of egos and things like that. And so we talked about that, but, specifically in those two, like, a lot of experience, right? Minutes. I mean, we graduated, we lost over 76% of scoring from last year. So having them, being back on the roster is going to definitely help, but they're going to have different roles now, maybe last year their roles were a little bit different. And in this year, it's going to be a little bit of a different role. And I think they've been doing a great job in kind of embracing that. And I'm kind of working with them now to become also more of leaders too, and being more vocal. Is, I understand, like, last year, Juana was one of the leaders, and some of the other, older players, and they didn't need to be in that role. Now I need them to be in that role. So I think they're doing a great job in picking up on those things as well.
Mm. Well, speaking of experience, it's always nice to have a couple of familiar faces with you when you begin anew elsewhere. And you were able to do that with Sierra D'Angelo, 6 foot forward grad transfer, played with you at the U, 12.5 points, 5 boards, 48% from the field, 30 minutes a game, second team All NEC. And then Ella Fajardo, 5'4" guard junior transfer, FDU, 21 minutes a game, 39% from three, about 8 points a game. So they did their share of winning as well. And on top of that, right out of the gate, you have two players familiar with your system. How has that impacted your summer workouts?
Yeah, before I answer that question, I also want to touch on pretty much my entire staff came with me from FDU.
It's true.
And that definitely helps with the transition, and they're amazing. I love my staff. I mean, they're a big part of our success. They were a huge, not just a big, huge part of our success. at FDU. So I'm extremely, just lucky and blessed that they're here with me, because that definitely also helps with the transition. And just returning to your question, Sierra and Ella, you know what? They've been tremendous, and I've asked them that, and I said, before they got here, because they're so selfless. Like, their personalities, they're selfless. They don't have big egos. They just want to do what's best for the team. And I knew coming to a new team, they wouldn't want to necessarily rock the boat. You don't want to come into a new team and all of a sudden, become a know-it-all or come across as a know-it-all. But I had that conversation with them before summer when they came on campus, and I said, I'm going to need you to step into those leadership roles right away. We have 7 returning players on this roster, and we lost a lot of leaders, a lot of older players that were in those leadership positions. You guys know me, you guys know our coaches, what this program is going to be about, the culture that we're going to try to build. I've coached Sierra for 4 years and Ella this for 2 years at that point, right? And don't worry about coming in as a transfer new player. I don't want you to be quiet. You have great personalities, do it in your own way, and I'm going to need you to help lead, because what we're about. And they've done a tremendous job, and I don't think I tell them enough what they do and how valuable it is, how they lead the team, and they do it in a great way, because there's so many different styles. Like, my leadership styles is different than theirs, but I think that's important to have different leadership styles from within the team, and then and then farther out. So it's been very, very helpful.
Okay. So definitely with all those names I mentioned, you have already a talented, experienced backcourt in place. You have an all-league caliber player in the front court with D'Angelo. Can you tell us more about how you see the front court shaping up?
Yeah, so we've brought in some transfers, some new players. We have some freshmen that are, at that forward position. That was the one thing that obviously when I first got here, I identified from the returning players, we didn't really have any post players. So obviously bringing Sierra was a huge get for us. I think she's going to have a tremendous, 5th year here. We brought in Ali Carmen, who's 6'5", transfer from, Boston College. We've brought in some freshmen who I think are going to be very good for us, in the future, and then, have an opportunity to be impactful players as freshmen. Zoe, who's from North Carolina, Emma, who is from Australia, and then obviously we have Petra coming back in her in her sophomore year at 6'2". So I think we've taken care of that. I think we're gonna be fine. We're just gonna be young.
Okay. And then just looking
other than Sierra, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, sure. No.
In Sierra, all of those players that I mentioned are freshmen or sophomores.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how do you navigate that? I mean, do you give them all a lot of play and just see who rises up out of the pack to really earn more minutes?
I can give you the answer on that yet. Those opportunities will be earned in practice, and they've been working on it now. So we still have, what is it? Today is actually 60 days until our first game. So
wow.
I believe it's 60 days today, till our season opener against Seton Hall. So it's certainly, still in the works. So
okay. You run a freshman. When you set out to recruit, what do you look for? Obviously you might say, "Oh, we really need a forward or that can do this or whatever." But beyond that, what do you look for when you're recruiting?
Yeah, someone that plays hard all the time, right? Obviously every coach wants to get the best player they can get, right? But the reality is well, not necessarily the reality is, but I just look for players who are hard-nosed. I like tough players. I like blue-collar type of players. It doesn't always have to be pretty, just get the job done. Great teammates. I think that's important. I think when you're part of any team, and it really doesn't matter, what your role is. You could play 30 minutes, you could play 40 minutes, you could play 2 minutes. I truly believe that every player is important. every member of the program is very, very valuable in in the success of a team. And player that plays 5 minutes is as important as player that plays 30 minutes. And it's so easy to overlook and say, hey, but she averages 15 points a game, and 7 rebounds a game. But that player that doesn't necessarily get those minutes, could be, doing all the right things and making our program just grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think that's so important. But in general, in recruiting, I mean, obviously they have to have a skill, right? So every year is a little bit different. I mean, depending on how many, positions you have, to fill, and what you exactly need, you might, it's you could need a shooter, right? You could need a rebounder. You could need I just need someone that's just tough, hard nosed, like great program player, someone that's, that maybe, we don't have somebody that can get to the basket. I just, so you got to have a skill. One, you have to have a skill. And then are you playing hard, and how do you, are you playing hard when things are going your way, or are you playing hard through it all, right? Are you a great teammate? But just in general, just a blue collar type of a player, someone that's a high achiever on, not just on the court, but in the classroom as well.
Okay. So we talked about summer workouts, and now we're starting to transition to the fall. So as the workouts have progressed, what are you seeing? What have you been surprised by from the team thus far? What do you, I don't want to give anybody a weakness, but is there anything that's worrying you? And just overall what you've seen and what you're feeling good about, maybe not so feeling good about.
So I'm a defensive coach, so of course, like, our defense is not where it needs to be. We have a long way to go. But that's typical, that's typical at this time of the year. And it's if your team is in a great defensive situation at this time of the year, you're in great shape for the entire season, right? But I think the chemistry of this team has been exceptional, and it's developed this summer. Like, I just saw it. They genuinely just really, really like each other. They hang out together all the time. And I think that's great, because that's where it needs to start, right? Them connecting, because we have 7 returning players and we've brought in 9 new players, and so there's a lot of newness in this program, right? So, but I think they've been connecting really, really well outside of the basketball court, which I think in the long run will help them to connect better and quicker on the basketball court. So I've been very pleased with that, because I think that's huge. I think that's huge when you're building a program. I mean, they're all just working extremely hard, they have a growth mindset. Every single player just wants to do well. I'm very happy with the work ethic. We just gotta start putting it together, right? And at the end of September, we're gonna kind of move into, team practices, and we're gonna be able to put a lot more, of that 5-on-5 together. But I've been really pleased with where we are right now.
Okay. So all right, here is your chance to sell some season tickets. Why should Iona fans come out and watch your team play?
I think we're gonna play with a lot of passion, a lot of energy. I think we are going to be the hardest working team on there. Like, if you come into the gym and you don't see a scoreboard, you're not gonna be able to see who's winning by how we play. And I think, I think the biggest thing is we're just gonna, our mindset is always going to be, to outwork people, with how hard we play. And that's going to be a consistent thing. And we're going to be fun to play. Like, I'm somebody that I'm very intense and I'm demanding on defense, but at the same time, I don't want to put handcuffs on players on the offensive end, because I just think when you do that, you're creating doubt in their minds. And the last thing you want to do, like, I was a player back in the day, and I didn't experience that. I was very fortunate. I didn't experience that. But the last thing you want to do is create doubt in the player. It's like, can I do that? Should I do this? I think that's part of coaching. You have to explain why. But I think from the offensive standpoint, I think it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to try to push the ball a little bit more. But again, like I tell the team all the time, like, we're going to do that if we're going to make good decisions, right? So, but I think, just to answer your question and to summarize, we're going to play extremely hard. We're going to play with a lot of heart and passion, and we're going to try to have fun while doing it. And we're just going to outwork everybody that's coming to our gym, coming to our place. We don't want to lose in that gym. So it's a great place to play.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, we wish you the best of luck, of course. I mean, looks like you've built a really solid team here, right, from day one. So we're excited to see what you can do here. As long as we get to have you at Iona, is of course, and I have to bring up the fact that I love that you're playing Tony Bozzella in game one. Of course, you know all about his Iona history, so I have to ask you about that as we wrap up here. Uh, what does it feel like playing a game like that against Tony Mazzella, who has such respect, and Iona has a place in his heart too?
But did you know that I also played for him?
I did not know that. Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
Yes. So my junior and senior year at LIU, I graduated from LIU Brooklyn, and that's where he was before he came to Iona. So he was
Right.
also my
That's
head
right.
coach. Yes.
Oh my, I did not know that. I'm wondering how many people listening knew that. That are like, God, you're an idiot. Yeah, I did not know that. So that's awesome. So that
Yeah,
must be even more special than for you. So that's awesome.
absolutely, absolutely. So no, I mean, he's a close friend of mine. He's one of my mentors. He's just a great guy, and he's just very, very, very passionate about the game of basketball. And he's somebody that, I kid you not, sometimes I want to ask him, do you ever sleep? Because I feel like if I texted him at midnight, he would respond to me right away.
Yeah.
And but that's just who he is, he just wants to help everybody. So so from personal standpoint, it's going to be special. 2 years ago, we played them in the first round of the WNIT. So it felt special, right? Because
Yeah.
he was my head coach, and now we're going against each other. And then absolutely, I mean, he had tremendous run at Iona, and brought one of the championships here. And he speaks so highly of Iona, and Iona still has special place in his heart. So we're excited for it. We're gonna be ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we remember about him is he was very passionate, and it was infectious to the fans, and you've got that vibe too. So we're excited for you to be here and to see what you can do leading the Iona women's team for the future. So thank you for coming on, and good luck to you this season, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys in November.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much for having me on.